Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. Today I'm going to be talking about how the NTIA is going to review and score middle mile broadband grants. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Zcorum. So the middle mile broadband grant NOFO is out. I've been going through that, went through it yesterday. If you try to get to that video, you're not going to be able to get to it because for some reason this morning I found out it was locked as private. YouTube had some kind of an issue. I contacted them and they said, oh yeah, that's a mistake. And not just my video, apparently lots of them. So that's locked as private. You can't get to it, but at some point, once they get to unlocking these things, that will be available. Yesterday I was talking about the application process. Today I want to talk about the review process and how the NTIA is going through and going to be scoring these things. So we're going to take a look at that. So you can see here the review process will be divided into several stages as outlined below. The initial administrative and eligibility review of complete application packets. NTI will conduct an initial review of timely received applications. NTI may request missing or incomplete information from the applicant as needed. The applicant will have 7 calendar days to submit materials responsive to the feedback provided by NTIA, unless this period is extended by NTIA. So they will review these things and may request or get back to you if you were putting in a middle mile grant information that's needed, but you got to get back to them in 7 days once you get that. After determining that an application is complete, NTI will evaluate whether the proposed project meets the Infrastructure Act's threshold eligibility criteria. See Section 3 above, before entering proposals into the merit review stage described below. Let's see, determining proposed infrastructure threshold eligibility requirements. Okay, so that was something I went over before. First, it has to be capable of carrying out a proposed project in a competent manner. Financial, technical, operational capability. And again, these are all kind of the application requirements, and now they're going to be reviewing those things that were part of the application. Second, the proposed project will, upon completion, be capable of supporting retail broadband service. Now, this is a middle mile network. You're not connecting retail customers to this, but you need to have a middle mile network that's going to be able to support retail broadband in the areas where you're providing that connection to. So that's the whole purpose of this. So obviously a middle mile network that can't support the end user subscribers that it's connecting is not going to work. So third, non-federal cost shares of no less than 30%. So there's a minimum match here of 30%, and actually they are providing incentives, as you'll look at in the ratings. That was this, yeah. I've walked through this a couple of times. You'll see that there are incentives to actually increase the match that we'll get to here in a minute. Fourth, each applicant must make a binding commitment to prioritize at least one of the following via their middle mile network. Connecting middle mile infrastructure to last mile networks that provide or plan to provide broadband service to households in unserved areas. Again, we're talking about an area, so this does not connect unserved households, but it connects an area of unserved households. Connecting non-contiguous trust lands, or the offering of wholesale broadband service at reasonable rates on a carrier-neutral basis. So in other words, it's kind of an open access middle mile network that others can connect to that's reasonable rates and neutral. Fifth, offer interconnection in perpetuity. They want this to be an ongoing concern where technically feasible without exceeding current or reasonably anticipated capacity limitations on reasonable rates and terms to be negotiated with requesting parties. Then there's a merit review. Applications satisfying the initial administrative and eligibility review will be evaluated by at least 3 objective reviewers who have demonstrated expertise in the programmatic and technical aspects of the Middle Mile Grant Program. These reviewers may be federal employees or non-federal employees. Each reviewer will be required to sign and submit a non-disclosure and confidentiality form pertaining to the dissemination of confidential information and to potential financial and other conflicts of interest. Reviewers will evaluate applications according to the following evaluation criteria and will independently score each application based on a scale of 0 to 100. So these folks will sign NDAs so that, as you're submitting this information, it's supposed to be secure, that it won't get disseminated, the really confidential stuff. So again, the scale of 0 to 100, project purpose and benefits, that's 60 points. So number 1, the extent to which the project will either A, facilitate deployment of high-speed broadband networks to currently unserved or underserved areas, as I mentioned. Or B, improve affordability in already served areas. For example, by reducing interconnection costs for last-mile providers or providing opportunities for competitive providers to offer last-mile service. So that portion of it, so this whole project purpose and benefits is 60 points. So this portion of it, that's number 1, is 20 points. So what they're saying there is on B, is if your middle mile network will actually reduce the interconnection costs that these last mile providers are having to pay now. So by providing another option for middle mile network, or maybe they're having to go a lot further distance to get connected to the internet, this will reduce their costs. So if you can demonstrate these things, that would be 20 points in your favor. Whether the project will offer non-discriminatory interconnection in perpetuity, as I was talking about, kind of an open access network, that's 10 points. In perpetuity on an open access, actually that's 10 points. So non-discriminatory in perpetuity, 10 points, and then open access, 10 points. That would be number 3. Extent to which the project will otherwise benefit the proposed service area. So anything else, such as facilitating development of carrier-neutral interconnection facilities, improving the redundancy or resiliency of the middle mile infrastructure, facilitating the provision of broadband service to anchor institutions located within 1,000 feet. So number 4, all of those items will add up to 10 points. Number 5, meeting the community's needs, ability to serve anticipated last mile networks and to meet the increasing needs of the households, businesses, and anchor institutions in the areas linked by the middle mile facilities. Reviewers will score favorably construction projects that are shovel ready and capable of completion within a 2-year period. So again, this is all meant to serve, even though it's a middle mile network, it's meant to serve these particular areas, and they're trying to focus this on areas that are unserved, underserved, because that's where this is needed. And then shovel ready as much as possible, I guess, considering supply chain constraints. Project sustainability is 40 points in this section. And that's made up of number 1 here, applicants' organizational capability to complete the specific project proposed. That's 5 points. So this gets back to, again, the application process where you're listing who your management folks are, what their experience is, as well as any contractors that you're using. Number 2 in this section, reasonableness of applicants' proposed budget, 10 points. Project's fiscal sustainability beyond the award period, 10 points. So yeah, you can go ahead and get your award, get everything in the ground, but how sustainable is it based on, financial factors? That's 10 points. Applicants' commitment to contribute more than 30% of the total eligible project cost. So here's where I was saying they're providing an incentive for people that are going to do these middle mile projects to actually do a greater share, not just 30%. And I'm sure some of this is related to some comments that Alan Davidson made when he was on with Drew Clark on Broadband Breakfast. He was being interviewed by Drew. And Drew was talking about the fact that, hey, that 25% looks like it's just a floor. It's not necessarily a maximum match. And Alan Davidson said, yeah, it could work out that way, where it's got to be at least 25. Well, here, and something he said was interesting, what Alan Davidson said. He said, through RDOF, we learned that service providers are willing to give much higher than 25%, because that reverse auction, they bid on how little they would take, and a lot of them were taking to the point where they were actually contributing 50% of the project. So you see here that they get 5 points for a non-federal share. This is their match between 30 and 40%. So they get 5 more points if they do 30 to 40. They get 10 points for non-federal share between 41 and 50. And 15 points for more than 50% of a non-federal share. So if I were going to do 50, I'd do 51%, because it sounds like you get another 5 points if you do that extra percent there, so I'd certainly do that. Programmatic review, prioritization, how they're going to prioritize these applications. Applications will be prioritized for programmatic review as follows. Number 1, Ntia will review any application that received a mean score of 80 or higher, so it's based on these scores that we just looked at, during the merit review, and for which the applicant has demonstrated that it will meet at least 2 of the 5 requirements set forth in Section 60401D2 of the Infrastructure Act. And I think, yeah, I did. So this is out of the Infrastructure Act, and it's the application for grants, evaluation of applications. The Assistant Secretary shall give priority to application from an eligible entity that satisfies 2 or more of the following conditions, and you can see these here: that they adopt fiscally sustainable middle mile strategies, that they commit to offering non-discriminatory interconnect to terrestrial and wireless last mile broadband providers, any other party making a bona fide request, that they'll identify specific terrestrial and wireless last mile broadband providers that have expressed written interest in interconnecting with middle mile infrastructure, demonstrate a sustainable business plans or adequate funding sources. The eligible entity has identified supplemental investments or in-kind support, such as waived franchise or permitting fees, that will accelerate the completion of the planned project, and that they have demonstrated that the middle mile infrastructure will benefit national security interests of the United States and the Department of Defense. So again, that has to do, I've talked about that the other day, has to do with, as you've got more middle mile infrastructure, duplicate or redundant middle mile infrastructure, that helps because you've got redundancy, more likely to have a single point of failure if something goes down, and plus, especially if you are in an area where you're helping connect any national security kinds of facilities, that would help as well. So that's what that is talking about there, that section. Number 2 here, NTIA will next review any other application receiving a mean score of 80 or higher during the merit review. So that just leaves off that second part there, that they established these areas that we just went through. Applications receiving scores below 80, that's next, for which the applicant has demonstrated that it will meet at least 2 of the 5 requirements set forth in the Infrastructure Act. So if it's below 80, then that same list that we just talked about. So you got above 80 in that list, you got above 80, and then you got below 80 in that list. They may be entered in the programmatic review after review of the prioritized applications in the event that A, the review results in a slate of proposals that do not utilize the entirety of the available middle mile grant program funds, or B, evaluation of other applications is deemed warranted at a later stage in the process to ensure geographic diversity or appropriate diversity in project sizes. At this stage of the review, applications with scores below 80 for which the applicant has demonstrated that it will meet at least 2 of the 5 requirements will receive priority before other applications with scores below 80. So in other words, once you get below 80, if the funds are gone, the funds are gone. You're not going to get anything. But if there's still funds there, then you have this opportunity once they look at that. And again, you want to be meeting at least 2 of these requirements to get a higher priority there. Programmatic review will involve 2 steps. First, the NTIA may ask applicants to submit additional information as appropriate to clarify or to further substantiate the representations made in their applications, to confirm eligibility and ensure that the application warranted the score assigned. NTIA will request supplemental documentation before deciding to deny any such applications. Applicants will have 5 calendar days to submit information responsive to the feedback provided by NTIA unless this time period is extended by the NTIA. So the first process is they may submit or may ask you to submit additional information. Second, NTIA will assess all projects that reach programmatic review to consider the extent to which those applications meet the criteria listed below. I'll go through those. And we'll calculate weighted scores to reflect each project's likelihood of advancing those goals. Each project's mean merit review score will be multiplied by between 1 for projects that do not meet any of the objectives listed below, and 1.8 for projects that meet all of the criteria listed below. Weights will be assigned based on the following criteria. So in other words, out of these 8 things I'm going to list, if you don't meet any of these, then you don't get any increase to your score. So you've already scored. You've already got your score between 0 and 100, and 80 and above is really where you're going to be looking at. And then on top of that, you can increase your score right here as they look at this process. So for each one of these, as I read this, for each one of these, you're going to count a 0.1. So if you get 1.0 means you don't meet any of these. I suppose if you meet one of these, you get multiplied by 1.1. If you meet 2, you get 1.2. And obviously, if you meet all 8, you get 1.8. So number 1, applicant's ability to demonstrate likelihood of material reduction in end-user broadband prices. So are you going to be able to bring broadband prices down with this? Material reduction. Number 2, material reduction in latency experienced by end users in remote or insular areas. So for example, Hawaii and Pacific Ocean territories. So you're going to get points for that. I guess it's not just about reducing latency, but in these really remote areas. Number 3, demonstrate that substantial benefits will accrue to high poverty counties, persistent poverty counties, and/or a substantial number of end user households that meet any of the following criteria. And these criteria are very similar to what you would see in a affordable connectivity program application, where somebody can apply if they meet certain things, certain poverty levels and whatnot. A lot of these are the same kinds of things. So they're talking about low-income areas here. This is interesting. So you got A, B, and then you got B. So somebody, that should be C, somebody misnumbered that here. On the NOFO, heads will roll. I don't know how that got past somebody. So you see that, and I'm not going to list all these. Again, these are different kinds of low-income kinds of criteria. Number 4, applicants' ability to demonstrate that substantial benefits to a previously unserved location and/or tribal land. So again, these are, is it unserved or is it tribal? That's going to give you some extra points here. Applicants' ability to demonstrate that the route of the proposed mile infrastructure is designed to enable connection of unserved anchor institutions, including tribal anchor institutions. Number 6, compliance with fair labor practices, highly skilled workforce, advancing equitable workforce development, and job quality objectives, and civil rights and non-discrimination law compliance. Number 7, climate resilience of the project. And number 8, use of community benefit agreements. So these are all things that they've come out and said that they want these programs to do, such as make sure that they're using union workforce, make sure that they're being, there's diverse workforce, climate resilience, again, with the administration's goals, ecological goals, kinds of things. They want to make sure that these facilities being put in, can withstand what could be coming, such as increased rainfall, fires, temperatures, flooding, those kinds of things. With respect, and that's it. Oh, and then 8, use of community benefit agreements. So again, there's 8 things, and however many you meet, you can multiply that 1 point whatever, 1.7, 1.8, 1.2, whatever number you meet, and that will increase your score from whatever it was. Each applicant should specify which of the above criteria it believes its project meets and provide evidence that supports its position with respect to each criterion. And they mean real evidence, not evidence presented on its own merit, as it says here. NTI reserves a right at any time during the review process to negotiate with the applicant relative to specific modifications to the application. Upon completion of the review, NTI program staff will summarize their analysis for each application received or reviewed, and will provide a ranked list of the proposed projects based on each project's weighted score to the Associate Administrator for the Office of Internet Connectivity and Growth, or OICG. In the event the list of proposed projects does not account for the entirety of the funding available, NTIA program staff shall conduct a programmatic review for any application that attained a mean score of between 70 and 79 during the merit review. We'll add the projects with the highest weighted scores to the list. So they're going to, if there's still money left, they're going to start working their way down. OICG, Associate Administrator Review. The OICG Associate Administrator will compose a list of the projects with the highest weighted scores, beginning with the highest scored application and moving in order down the list until the projects on the list account for all available program funds. Or it says here, until the addition of the next project listed would cause demand to exceed available funds. So I guess if there's only 100 million left and the next one would be 200 million, that one won't get in there. And they'll prepare a package of recommended awards to the selection official for consideration, review, and approval. And then we got the final project selection. As a selecting official, the assistant secretary, I'm assuming that's, I don't know if that's OICG or if that would be, that's probably NTIA. So that might be Alan Davidson. The assistant secretary retains discretion to select and recommend an application for funding that was not recommended by the OICG Associate Administrator, and or not to select an application that was recommended for funding by the OICG Associate Administrator based on A, geographic diversity, and B, appropriate diversity in the size of the funding amount of proposed awards. So basically, Alan Davidson will have some discretion based on those items. He'll also submit the applications recommended for funding to the National Institute of Science and Technology Grants Officer. The award decisions of the Grants Officer are final. Unsuccessful applicants will be notified in writing after all selections are finalized. Then we've got the Federal Awarding Agency review of risk posed by applicants. The NIST Grants Management Division will perform pre-award risk assessments, which may include a review of the financial stability of an applicant, the quality of the applicant's management systems, the history of performance, reports and findings from audits, and/or the applicant's ability to effectively implement statutory, regulatory, or other requirements imposed on non-federal entities. So I don't know if this is a next step, because obviously all of this has to be in the application, and somebody's going to be looking at this and then ranking these things and rating them, and then maybe it gets to this step and they give it a second go around on this review of these things in the application. Upon completion of the pre-award risk assessment, NIST will determine whether the applicant is qualified to receive the award. And then we've got the anticipated announcement and award dates. So award processing will be by February 16th, 2023, and they expect that start dates for awards no earlier than March 1st, 2023. Federal Award Administration information and award notices. A grants officer from NIST will serve as the grants officer for awards issued pursuant to this NOFO. Applicants will be notified in writing by the NIST officer in their application, if their application is selected for an award. If it's unsuccessful, you'll be notified by email and will have the opportunity to receive a debriefing after the opportunity is officially closed. Now, if you want to do that debriefing, you need to make that request within 10 business days. Then we've got some other things in here. Retention of unsuccessful applications, they're going to hold on to those. Administrative and national policy requirements. Grant recipients will comply with all of these things. This is your typical government bureaucracy, regulation stuff. I'm just going to, if you want, you can read through this. And then this I thought was interesting. Here's one here, number 6, domestic preference for procurements by Americans. So there is actually some controversy around this right now. There are several association groups that are pushing for NTIA to waive this. It says here, the Infrastructure Act presents an important opportunity to ensure that American taxpayer dollars are spent procuring needed products and supplies from American workers and businesses. Accordingly, all funds made available through the program, Middle Mile program, must comply with the Build America, Buy America Act. That act requires that all of the iron, steel, manufactured products, including but not limited to fiber optic communications facilities and construction materials used in the project or other eligible activities are produced in the United States unless a waiver is granted. I didn't know it was all, unless maybe it's all in bead, and or maybe it's all in here and only a certain percentage in bead, or maybe I misread that somewhere else. But in any event, like I said, there's several associations. I think NCTA, I believe. I believe maybe NCTA, and the other one that sounds very similar. Who else? Some people like, some that you would expect, like Cisco, Intel, are saying we would like this waived because although these products are designed and engineered here, they quite often are built offshore somewhere, so they're not built here. So they are also saying that they would like this waived. And then there's some, like Adtran, has said, no, we want this in, because I guess Adtran must maybe build most, or can, if they don't already, certainly maybe can shift some manufacturing here in the United States to be able to do that. So they've said, yeah, no, we should keep this in. And what they're saying is that's kind of a way to for these folks to circumvent doing offshore kinds of manufacture. So anyway, this is controversial right now, so we'll have to see what happens with this if NTIA decides to keep this in here or be a little bit more liberal on waivers, because right down here it says the Secretary will seek to minimize waivers, and any waivers will be limited in duration and scope. And then here again, there's another one, contracting with small minority businesses. So again, this is a lot of the yada yada kind of stuff. Reporting. Biannual performance reporting and final report. An eligible entity that receives an award shall biannually, until the funds have been expended, submit to the Assistant Secretary a report with respect to the 6-month period immediately preceding the report date. That 1, describes how the entity expended the funds, and 2, certifies that they complied with the requirements in the program. And they would do that by describing each service provided and information regarding the middle mile infrastructure constructed, how it constructed, improved, or acquired. Information regarding middle mile infrastructure constructed, improved, or acquired. I guess how it made things better. Describes whether the project prioritizes local hires, whether it's got a community benefit agreement, whether they received, identifies each subrecipient that received a subaward or subcontract. Technical progress, reporting information, how much progress they're making. And then for projects over $5 million, there's some additional stuff in here, including, it says, a certification that for the relevant project, that all laborers and mechanics employed by contractors and subcontractors in the performance of such project are paid wages at rates not less than those prevailing as determined by the U.S. Secretary of Labor. So again, if you're over $5 million in your award, and there's some other stuff in here that you can read through. Again, lots of regulatory stuff that we all love to read. I think that was, yeah, that's all I was going to go through today. So that's the process. That's just kind of towards the end of the NOFO. So I tried to highlight some things. Again, yesterday I talked about the application process, and hopefully that video will be unlocked soon if you want to go look at that. But I will, just as I did on previous videos, I'll go ahead and post a link to the NOFO on the YouTube channel here. So make sure you look for that. I'll be back next week with another broadband deployment news. If you're not subscribed, go ahead and click the subscribe button and click the little bell to be notified. If you like this, if it was helpful, go ahead and click the like button. And also, don't forget, if you need any help with broadband deployment, we can help with that, whether it's anything from feasibility studies, engineering, construction, design construction, also really after the fact. So once you get your broadband in the ground, there's lots of things, especially if you're new at this, if you're an electric co-op or municipality, you're new to broadband, we actually have lots of managed services after the fact. So we can provide device activation, for example, activating the ONTs, the customer home. We do technical support for the end user. If they call in and have a problem, we can take those. We have managed services that you can provide over there to increase revenue and provide a better service to subscribers, such as cloud-based voice service for residential and business, IPTV service that's very easy, relatively speaking. You don't have to build a whole big head end. There's very little equipment. We include programming, so that's something that you can offer your subscribers. We have DDoS protection. If you need to have IPv4 addresses, we have carrier grade NAT, so you would need to have very few of those. You're still going to need those, even if it's a new network, because you still have to have people reach IPv4 content. So anyway, all these things we can help with. So make sure you check us out, check out our website, send us an email or give us a call, and tell us how we can help you. We'd be happy to do a demonstration of anything or meet with you as needed. Thanks a lot, and we see you next time. Bye-bye.